Trump hails reopening, but Iran is seen reshaping control over the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran strengthens its hold on the key oil route, signaling limits to U.S. influence in the Gulf. Iran's hardline establishment is seen setting the terms in Hormuz, raising questions over U.S. strategy. Even with U.S. presence in the region, Iran retains decisive leverage over the Strait of Hormuz. The IRGC Navy signaled tighter control over the Strait of Hormuz by announcing a new order governing maritime movement. According to a statement released on April 17, the IRGC Navy introduced strict new regulations for all vessels passing through the strait. The statement said that all ships would require explicit authorization from IRGC forces before being allowed to transit. It also stated that commercial vessels would be required to follow routes specifically designated by Iranian authorities. IRGC Navy commanders said the measures were aligned with the framework of the ongoing Iran-US ceasefire agreement. Officials further linked the new regulations to the implementation of the ceasefire in Lebanon. The updated rules underscored Iran's firm control over one of the world's most critical energy shipping corridors. In a separate development, a stranded passenger cruise ship was able to pass through the strait after 47 days. The Malta-flagged Celestial Discovery crossed the Strait of Hormuz on April 17 and was expected to reach Oman shortly thereafter. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi announced the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz for commercial traffic during the ceasefire period. He clarified that all transit would remain limited to routes coordinated and approved by Iranian authorities. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson reiterated that the policy followed the April 8 ceasefire agreement. The Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson added that all maritime movement through the Strait of Hormuz remained under Tehran's full coordination and control. Esmaeil Baghaei said, and I quote, "Iran is the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz. If the other side chooses to break its commitments, which it appears it intends to do, and if the naval blockade continues, the Islamic Republic of Iran will take the necessary reciprocal measures. There is no doubt about that." Unquote. Esmaeil Baghaei said Iran had pushed for a ceasefire in Lebanon, after which the Strait of Hormuz was reopened. He also stressed that Iran would take reciprocal measures if any side violated its commitments. Separately, Iranian Navy Commander Shahram Irani dismissed U.S. claims regarding a naval blockade, rejecting their validity. Donald Trump, however, insisted that the U.S. naval blockade would continue despite the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Central Command Chief said American forces could sustain the blockade for as long as necessary. CENTCOM further claimed it was closely monitoring all Iranian ports and tracking every vessel movement. In response, Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf warned Washington over its continued naval blockade policy. Ghalibaf cautioned that Tehran could close the Strait of Hormuz if the U.S. persisted with its blockade. Meanwhile, the U.S. reportedly refused to lift its restrictions unless a broader transaction involving Iran's uranium transfer was completed.
A great and brilliant day for the world, because Iran has just announced that the Strait of Hormuz is fully open and ready for business and full passage. But the naval blockade, with the greatest navy in the world, from the greatest military the world has ever seen, we built it during my first term. We built it. They said I was crazy. We weren't so crazy, were we? Will remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete and fully signed. And this process, we're getting along well, but who knows with anyone, but who knows with Iran in particular. This process should go very quickly, and that most of the points are already negotiated and agreed to. You'll be very happy. The USA will get all nuclear dust. You know what the nuclear dust is? That was that white powdery substance created by our B-2 bombers, those great B-2 bombers, late one evening, 7 months ago. No money will exchange hands in any way, shape, or form. Iran will be, and you know how we're going to get the dust, right? Iran, we were going to take it anyway, but taking it that way is slightly more dangerous, but we were going to get it anyway. But Iran, with the help of the USA, has removed or is removing all of the sea mines. And most importantly, it never agreed, and you'll understand, they will never have a nuclear weapon. They will never have a nuclear weapon. And somebody said, how are we going to get the nuclear dust? We're going to get it by going in with Iran, with lots of excavators, because the B-2s, remember when fake news CNN said, well, maybe obliteration is too strong a word, obliteration. That's so deep. We need the biggest excavators you can imagine, but we're going to go in together with Iran, we're going to get it, and we're going to take it back home to the USA. Very simple. Yesterday, on top of it all, we achieved what everyone said was impossible, an unprecedented ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, and that hasn't taken place in 78 years. 78 years. Our deal with Iran is not in any way tied to Lebanon, but we will make Lebanon great again. I mean, it's about time we did so. We've sort of, the world has forgotten them, and they're good people who have lived like hell for a long period of time. And hopefully the situation with Hezbollah will get straightened out quickly. And I also want to thank Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. They've been amazing. They've all helped tremendously, tremendously. And it took courage for them. Not easy, not easy. They were living with what they call the bully of the Middle East. They had the bully. Iran was the bully of the Middle East. They're not the bully anymore. Our ancestors knew exactly what to do with America's enemies. Beat them and beat them good. That's what they had to do. That's what they had to do. And if NATO teaches us any one thing, and I hope you all watched, because they weren't there for us, if it teaches us any one thing, we have to rely on ourselves. We can't rely on outside countries and outside sources.
Donald Trump's efforts to block Hormuz and push Iranians toward despair have now run into a serious new roadblock. The American blockade of Hormuz and Iran's ports is unlikely to change much for ordinary Iranians, according to this analysis. The report says the country has diversified the ways it sells oil and has become highly skilled at keeping the trade alive. An Al Jazeera report offered this analysis of the ongoing US blockade and its limited effect on Iran. Earlier, an Iranian minister said the country would not be significantly affected by any blockade, insisting that Tehran has the resilience and alternatives to absorb the pressure. Iran has more than 8,000 kilometers of land and sea borders, and the minister said that Tehran can neutralize any blockade by relying on border trade. Ali Hashim said, and I quote, "The country has diversified the ways in which it sells oil abroad. They have been selling oil with other names and mastering the business of smuggling it outside the national borders. It's going to be very challenging for the US to make Iran feel the heat more because it's already living in the heat." End quote. The analysis comes as reports suggest Iran could maintain oil production despite the blockade. Iran could continue producing oil for up to 2 months even though its exports have been completely halted, according to a new report released late this week. The United States is currently blockading Iranian ports in an attempt to intensify pressure on Tehran and force the regime into making concessions during ongoing negotiations over a broader regional deal. However, recent maritime data suggests that cargo ships have been openly flouting the U.S. naval blockade by continuing to move in and out of Iranian waters despite the official restrictions. If the blockade is eventually enforced in a much stricter and more complete manner, Iran may still be able to withstand the economic and supply chain pressure for roughly 2 months before it begins to feel severe strain. After that 2-month window, Iran may be forced to start cutting back its oil output significantly if the U.S. blockade on its key ports remains in place without any relief or loosening of sanctions. The halting of regular exports would place steadily increasing pressure on Iran's already stretched oil storage capacity, filling up its tanks and making it harder to manage ongoing production. The blockade could prevent approximately 2 million barrels of crude oil per day from reaching Iran's main buyer, China, disrupting a major pillar of Tehran's energy export economy. If Iran is forced to shut down substantial parts of its production, those lost barrels would add to more than 12 million barrels per day of disrupted global oil supply already caused by other conflicts and sanctions around the world. These predictions were made by the well-known energy consultancy FG Nexant ECA, as reported by the international news agency Reuters on April 15. Iran currently has about 90 million barrels of crude oil stored in its domestic facilities,